inauguration. I'm super interested to learn what that means. I'm excited for our guests. Our esteemed guests today are Dr. Pearson, who is newish title, right? Yeah. Senior Vice President of North America and Global Retail. Great job, everyone. Great job. Big time. Very proud of you. Also, very excited to introduce Chris Alexander, the founder of the Dial Artist, and I think the Dial Artist himself, if I'm not mistaken. So not just founder, the Dial Artist. Okay, great, cool. And then our esteemed moderator of today's panel, Kate Basil, who is a contributing editor at WindUp. So give our esteemed panel a hand. Thank you again.
You guys have partnered together, collaborated together on a number of pieces. We're culminating in something new that we have here to show today. But kind of walk us through how it started and how it got here.
How we started.
And so, previous projects, you have worked on the dial as your name indicates, but for this latest project, things have taken a different route, and you've actually been working on a skeletonized piece, which includes components that need to be functional as well. So, what can you kind of describe about the difference of working on the platform of the dial compared to now working on components that have to be functional? And it seems like it was quite a multi-stage process of negotiating when you're kind of bringing in what does collaboration mean of you creating the aesthetic components, but then also obviously other members of the team like Christopher Ward having to ensure that the functionality of those components remains intact as well.
Yes, I mean, it's a completely different animal. You can realistically think about that as a very small canvas. It's got no other function but to hide and to actually maybe show the indication of time. Each of the crystal of jewels, a number of functions, as you say, some parts are required to move or work with other parts. So you have to approach it in a collaborative process of understanding the technicality of a watch, as well as what crystal watch requirements are, as well as understanding what you can and cannot paint, because the tolerances are, I think the paint thickness tolerance was 0.2 millimeters. I don't know what that is. Very, very thin. Like maybe a sheet of paper is a paint tolerance thickness. But it's also, the prototyping stage was about 6 months. So from getting the first class painting those, sending them back to Crystal Ward, they did their testing. There was errors, they sent it back to me. We find them out. The paints involved had to be ensured that they don't leak paint gas off. So if you've ever walked into a fresh painting office and you smell paint is what they call gassing off, and you can't have gas off in a watch because that will corrode all the components. So you have to make sure that the paint is compatible with oils and those parts. So it's a very technical process in the sense of not just randomly painting a watch. As much as a watch looks like it's just sporadic, it is controlled, and that's the difficult thing to make express. It looks like you're taking a paintbrush and just going to which I would love to do. But it's airbrushed and hand painted, and I think 900 hours in total for the entire project, so it's quite intense.
And I'll add to that as well. When it comes to collaboration, this watch, the 12X, we launched it 2 years ago. We did it in a special limited edition in steel. We then did a titanium version, and then we've recently done one in a black DLC. All are very traditional. This movement is, well, now it's 12 years old. When it first came out, it was a celebration of us being the first British brand in 50 years to have our own movement. And so to have Chris's art, to have the dial artist who has worked with other brands, the best thing that I think that Mike and Peter and Sarah, our COO, saw downstairs was that he had not only an eye for his art, but he could take something which was already beautiful and enhance different parts within it. And I think when you've done 3 different models, the same model, same clothes-ish, but different materials, this is a whole different ballgame. And so the way that the dial has opened up, the way that it's been reacted to today, it's launching today, is a testament to the art that Chris has got, but also the way that he saw Christopher Ward and that particular movement as a very, very unique canvas.
And I think you've created a perfect segue, and I want to kind of explain to people what is the title of this panel mean. And crossover collaboration to me is bringing someone who has worked in other artistic mediums, other design, and we've worked in street art, which is a massive, massive canvas, and then down to the small space of the watch. So I think the question for both of you is like, what does that mean for Christopher Ward to be tapping artists who, as you said, kind of have that perspective outside of this industry? And then also for you, Chris, like what does that mean? And obviously you've garnered this name, the dial artist, so you've made this crossover from other mediums to specializing in this much smaller canvas of a watch, and like how has that informed your creative process? So I'd love to hear from both of you how, what is inspiring or what is surprising, why do you think it's important to kind of have these collaborations that transcend this industry?
We do a lot of collaborations. You might notice with Christopher Ward, we're not going to stand on our laurels. We're not doing 2 or 3 launches. We're always continually evolving, maturing, learning about ourselves. Not to talk about another artist, but I think it's quite nice to show collaboration. This was a watch we did with Savant Savant. He's quite obscure, quite abstract with his art. He uses humour, but this is a very traditional look from afar. The lovely thing when you come into what Chris does, it's not traditional, it's not normal, but both of these fit the narrative of what we're trying to tell as a story. And I think that's what we can try and do as a brand really well. We're not a chronograph brand, we're not an aviation brand, we're not known just for divers. So why not reach out and always do something different? We have art within our own brand. We look at this gentleman in front with a bel canto. That chimes, that is sound, but that's unique to Christopher Ward. It's been done for so many years, but for a long time, it was really unobtainable because of price points in that type of complication. Our Swiss artists, our Swiss designers, who are artists within themselves, took that function and made it beautiful. So what we're doing here is telling the story of the artist, but again, the collaboration then reaches across the divide. On my side, Chris has done this for so many years, and I love yesterday we had an event in our showroom, and I'm like, oh, would you like to meet Chris? Yeah, I've been following him for years, and they'd never seen Christopher Ward before. So in turn, maybe someone would never have been to Christopher Ward because of the art that he's done, and now we're together. That's a beautiful thing. That's collaboration, on my side.
Just to kind of touch on that, I mean, I think the reason why I got into this industry because I wanted something unique in my own race. So I come from an art and design background, and I was looking at modifications and all that kind of stuff 10, 15 years ago that didn't really exist. So I took my skills in art and design and decided to apply it to the watch style. And people resonated with that. We're like, oh, there's somebody doing something different. It looks different. And then through the years, that's kind of moved on to a journey of working with collectors, probably what I do most, and putting their personality on their watch. So it's not necessarily about me as an artist. People want to go, what do you want to paint on my watch? I'm like, I'm not wearing your watch, you're wearing your watch, so what would you like to see on your watch? I would try and bring my own unique flair and twist and personality, but the artwork itself is really an extension of the wearer, and I think that's why I love doing what I do. Some people might have a memory of a location, their pet, a loved one on their wrist, and be part of that mobile gallery, because you are, I mean, it is a mobile gallery. People are walking around with artwork on their wrist is quite unique, a special thing to be part of. So, doing it on a grander scale where you can bring in your intrinsic interest of I love street art, I cannot do street art, I do love it, but I cannot go and spray paint a wall. My niche is a canvas that size. So everybody has their kind of their limit, and my limit is working. So going size canvas, but I love doing it. The challenge on that is what I love the most.
So you just mentioned that you like the challenge of the confine, and I do want to bring back, circling back to this latest piece, that again the confines changed even further to working on these movement components. So I'm wondering from either of you, again, as you said, Christopher Ward has done many collaborations. You, Chris, have worked on watches for many brands, and including, you know, pieces with Christopher Ward. Is there anything that you're walking away, either of you, from this collaboration that has taught you something new, surprised you, inspired you, informed maybe something that now you aspire to try in a next piece that you two might work on together? I'm wondering kind of, you know, every time that there's a project, there's personal growth, like for the brand or for you as an artist, Chris. So I'm wondering if there's anything kind of specific that might be surprising or unexpected that came throughout the creative journey of bringing this watch to life that you're going to maybe take with you into either of the next projects that you guys pursue.
This project is a first in a sense of working on the skeletized movement, and with that I think that has moved me away from just working on the confines of the dial. So it's hugely developmental for me, and I think that informs that you aren't limited to just the dial. You can look further beyond the dial. There's rotors, there's bridges, there's dare I say, you can even move on to more mechanical parts. How could you paint things like the hands neck? How could you paint things like the outside of the gear? So I think it would be amiss to say that you should stop and never explore. I think this is a working prototype We've never done this before. I've certainly never done this before. Just Awards have done this before. So I think the constant push to do something new is that gets me out of bed. So I think the next step is to try and see what we could do with this. Could it be cases? Could it be straps? Could it be something external? Could it be still more internal parts? Who knows? But I think the next step should be another evolution of what we're doing.
I don't think there's been too much to surprise. What I like is that every single collaboration that we do, every watch that we release, it always comes out. It's you hear about those artists, those singers, and once the song is released, it's not yours anymore. We never know how it gets received. We talked about it last night before the event, and then you start to see these watches being sold, being talked to, but it's only until you see it on somebody's wrist or in somebody's hand when you go, actually, you've smashed it. And so I think just about everything that Christopher Ward has released over the last couple of years. But the big surprise for me is how much I've resonated with these colours in this way. Because we hear it all the time. We see the rendering, or you read the press release, and am I going to like it? And we're an online brand, so a lot of those questions come from that. This in real life is real art, and I've been very, very, very happy to see people's reaction to it.
So I think my last question for you all before we open it up to the audience and take some of their questions too is, and Michael, this may be a little bit more for you, like, what is the meaning of collaborations, like, to the Christopher Ward brand, in the watch industry at large? Why are collaborations important? And really extending to our audience here, why are these collaborations important for collectors?
It's a really good question. I think we can all agree in the audience, a black dial or a blue dial or a white dial, you lean into what you like, right? And sometimes you can only discover what you like if you reach into a different audience or a different palette. These collaborations push us to look a different way. We also, as we've talked about, reach to a different audience or a different aesthetic. And I think in turn, those gents and those ladies who maybe would never have looked at our watches in those colours go, I get it. Because it opens your mind. We talk about some of the different models we've got. Even Zach Kazan's on the front there. He's wearing a watch we did called the Brooklynite. And that resonated massively with the Worn and Wound crowd. Mostly, it started because of the three founders who looked at the Williamsburg clock tower, right? But then you go to WindUp in New York, and there's guys and girls from all over the country who saw that clock tower in any scenario, or you've got people who grew up next to that clock tower and it means something. Or you can show somebody who's never been near it what we're capable of architecturally. So collaborations matter because it pushes us, it shows different audience what we're capable of, and it doesn't keep us in a safe space. We make a lot of watches, we release a lot of watches, but we're just not three different dials and three different sizes that do one different thing. We're a living, breathing entity that has to learn because the audience, the collective community, demands it on us because we have to. So on my side is that. Just be a bit braver and you never know what you'll discover.
Does anybody here have questions for these fellas on the stage? And we will fortunately have another mic here that we can offer to you.
Maybe you said this at the very beginning of the packet here, but the specific colors or design, was that inspired by anything in particular?
He just said, is that were the colours and design inspired by anything in particular?
Yes, so when I started to look into the watch, I wanted to look at the collection that Christopher Ward had produced. And obviously there's a range of different colours of the 12X as well as the Phantoms and so forth. So they aren't afraid to use colour, and I decided to then pick 14 colours that were harmonious to that core collection of the 12X. And then so you pick like an orange and you pick a shade. I decided the orange, so if you kind of have to look at it as an amalgamation of past colours and past kind of dial-inspired colours, all goes into one kind of creative splatter.
Good question.
For the hobbyists amongst us that like to paint our own dials, what do you use to paint with that's going to hold up well on the dial? Is it going to discolor over time? What do you recommend?
So if you can't fire enamels, you can get cold enamels which dry through evaporation. Those are probably the best type of paints you can use. You could use acrylics, you could use oils. That's my personal preference. I know I've done it for 10 plus years. And I recently saw a watch I painted 10 years ago and it looks exactly the same as then painted it. So, but again, it's like asking Michelangelo to change to watercolor. It might not work for you. So it's always experiment, always try and then see where you go for your preference.
I have another question for Mike. It's more of a business question, if that's okay. I always find it interesting when there's limited releases, sort of where they get priced at and the amount that you make. How do you guys make those decisions? How do you come up with it? I'm interested in that.
Collaborating, the question is about the price of the watches, where it comes from and how many we make. When it comes to how many we make, first of all, if it's not hand painting in 900 hours, you've got to think of the artist as well, right? What's the right amount of number that's going to be right for the work that Chris and people like Chris would put in? It keeps it special to the wearer, but also make sure that the work doesn't change and that it's special within the artist. When it's something which is printed or it's something which is traditional watchmaking, it's done back in Switzerland, we're also very careful. This is with everything. What do we think that style, that design could do? So I'll give you an example, the Pan Am watch. We made 707, Boeing 707. We have 1,000 people on a wait list. So do we make another 1,000 or do we plan for that? Or does that project become even more special that only 707 people have it? Now when you're working with Pan Am or you're working with any artist, the time needs to be rewarded, but what we always say with Christopher Ward, whatever the watch costs us to build, the price just goes up by 3. That doesn't really change. When you've got certain licenses or so on and so forth that has to be paid, that goes into what it costs to build. Same thing. We might be unique in that way. Other companies, and we say this with love, there's a perceived value of what that limited edition project could be. We're just a bit more nuts and bolts than everybody else, but that's probably the best way I can say it. Yes, sir.
Have you ever turned down a collaboration request and why?
Have we ever turned down a collaboration? Now, Christopher Ward's 22 years old. Mike France is a very strong character, and what I've loved about knowing Mike is that he doesn't just choose people for money. He wants to add to them, and we want to be added to their repertoire as well. Some projects don't work, some projects don't matter, or at least some projects can't amalgamate or mix well. So we have had to say no, but not because of any other reason that we don't like them, we just don't think it's a good fit. We're open to every conversation though. So if you take Everton, for example, it's a soccer team that we sponsor. Mike is a supporter of Everton. We don't say no to other brands or other football teams because he doesn't support them. We can just put our time into that and do that project the service it deserves. So yeah, it's got to be give and take always, for sure. Have you ever had to have those weird conversations?
Yes. But just to touch on what Mike was saying in terms of pricing, when I work with a brand, I don't see a value of working with a brand for them to elevate that price beyond their core collector, because then we sell the watch too. So we work, first of all, we're very flexible, we work really well to find that point where it is a table of our collectors. So there is a give and take on both sides. And well, we want this project to work. It's not always about financials, to be honest. It's about doing something you are passionate about to do. But certainly turned out plenty of private commissions. Some because they're politically motivated, some you just don't feel as if you can do the justice and the service it deserves. And I have actually said, it's like, well, I think you maybe speak to those people because they can do that type of artwork better than I can. So, and I think that always does you service in the long run to not accept something, do it, and then feel as if you've done a bad job because you're only as good as your last style.
questions?
Just a super quick one. What percentage of it is collaboration versus like custom like one-offs? So you do a lot of collaboration, or is it weighted more towards that, like working with brands, or is most of what you do like working with a direct client, doing like an individual customer?
In the last year and a half, there's been more brand collaborations, but I think the custom collaborations support brand collaborations because brand collaborations can take an awful long time to do. In the beginning of this year, I did one with Spinnaker and that was 400 dials, so that takes an awful lot of time to process. And then obviously customer reward as well, that's a year and a half conversation. You can't just wait for that to keep going. So every brand collaboration is intersected with lots of private commissions. So it's 50-50 thing.
I will just add, if that's okay, the last thing is, as a brand and as someone who leads the brand here in North America, I can say that most of the watches that were bought online today from Chris's collaboration was from Americans. So we also know that the audience, and that's the different customers in different countries, they might resonate more with this than other places. And I'm really proud to see that. So as you guys are my American representatives, thank you. It's been a really fantastic day. So thank you very much.
Any last questions? Opening it up one last time. Yes.
What's next? Can't tell you. What's next? I know you can't say. You can't say either. All right. I tried.
He has to try. He has to try. Okay, and lastly, I'm going to open it up just to you two. This is how I end every conversation that I have. Is there anything left unsaid? Anything that I didn't ask but should have? Anything more that you all want to add to this topic of conversation that we've had today?
I'll always have an opinion, unfortunately. No, it's really just a simple one. We're not going to stop, but in the long history of Chris Ward's future, this is a very, very special part of it. So I just wanted to say thanks to Chris in front of you all. So that's all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thanks everyone for